now, US inflation has hit its highest level in 40 years with a 7.5% increase. So what does inflation, or US inflation, mean for us here in the UK?
Yes, well, to talk through not only US inflation, but also those GDP figures that came out this morning, we've got in the studio our very own Liam Halligan, the economics and business editor of GBNews. Welcome to the programme, Liam.
Good to see you guys. Now, nice to see you in a tie, Tom.
Decree. But on GDP, there's a bit of something for everyone here. People who want to say that the UK economy is stagnant and slow can point to the future projection, which is pretty anemic. But people who want to say that actually the UK economy is going gangbusters can point to how growth over the last year was higher than expected. Who should we listen to?
It is a mixed bag. You know, you pay your money, you take your choice, quite literally. GDP, of course, is gross domestic product. It's the way we measure the size of our economy. It's the sum of all transactions across the economy. GDP grew in 2021 by 7.5%. By 7.5%. That's the biggest growth since 1940. So big historic figures, the fastest growth in the G7. But that's because in 2020, during lockdown, we fell off an economic cliff, effectively. In December, though, you talked earlier about you were talking to Michael Kill about the hospitality industry getting hammered in December because those Omicron restrictions came in. The economy actually shrank in December. It didn't stop that big growth number in 2021 as a whole, but it shrank in December, so there was kind of a sting in the tail. And we're still now only just about bigger in terms of the economy than we were back in February 2020 when lockdown first happened, when we all heard about COVID for the first time.
So despite that enormous growth that we've seen the last year, it's just got us back up to where we were before.
Just about.
And talk to us about inflation, because obviously we know we're facing a cost of living crisis this year, aren't we? Lots of people are going to feel much poorer, certainly, than they would have done previously. I mean, what is this year looking like in terms of inflation, and what does it mean for people's pockets?
Well, my show, On the Money, which is at 1 p.m, it's basically become a kind of cost of living show. We're absolutely focused on higher fuel bills, the tax rises coming in April. There's kind of a cost of living double whammy coming down the track. And it's all in the context of higher inflation, price rises across the board, Mercy. We know UK inflation is already at 5.4%. That's much, much higher than the Bank of England's 2% target. If you measure it by the old measure, the retail price index, RPI, it's 7.4%, and there is more to come. And we can say there's more to come because of this US number that you referred to earlier. UK inflation is at a 30-year high. US inflation, we learnt last night, has gone to a 40-year high at 7.5%. And what's happened since then is those money markets have moved, people investing and betting money, our pension funds, our insurance schemes, the stocks and shares, the bond markets. They are now pricing in, I'm afraid, UK interest rates, they're currently at 0.5%, of around 2%, so 4 times more by the middle of next year. Now, that's still quite low by historic standards, but Mercy, a lot of young people, they've never heard of interest rates above sort of 1%. So if we go to 2%, the 2 to 3 million households with those variable rate mortgages will end up paying a lot more. On the other hand, a lot of GB News viewers are older, they might have some savings. Finally, you'll get a bit of a return on your savings, but it still won't be enough to offset inflation. So tough economic times ahead, despite, as Tom says, these very impressive headline growth numbers.
So let's talk about inflation as a phenomenon. What is pushing this inflation? There's 2 different types, right? Like cost push and demand pull. It seems that in terms of energy, cost push is really pushing up prices there. But in some other areas, demand pull, many more people, a lot of loose monetary policy over the last 2 years, free cash printing from government. Has that affected inflation?
Well, get my A-level economic notes out here. Mate, it's worth going into, though, because people really need to get their heads around this. I think this is the biggest story in Britain at the moment, the cost of living crisis. I know we all talk about Downing Street birthday parties and cakes and all the rest of it. But for me, for most people I talk to, most people who email me, members of the public I meet, come up to me on the street, it's cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. It's partly because of demand, right? The global economy has bounced back after lockdown. Everybody wants everything now, not least fuel and energy. steel, semiconductors, so the price goes up because companies can't quite get back into gear, given all those supply chain issues and logistics, shipping's in a mess. All the containers are in the wrong places to where they should be. So you've got that kind of demand push against the supply constraint that pushes prices up. As you say, Tom, you've also got the fact that central banks around the world have been effectively printing money. They haven't been printing cash like paper, but they've been increasing their balance sheets and extending those credits on behalf of governments in order to try and keep the global economy afloat. First after the 2008 financial crisis, and even more so since the COVID pandemic. So there is a lot of inflation coming down the track. And I'm afraid with inflation now 5, 6, 7%, take your pick on the measure. If you're not getting a 5, 6 or 7% pay rise, you're losing out. And yet your phone companies, the train companies, they're raising prices by 5, 6 and 7%.
And yet the Governor of the Bank of England is saying, don't ask for a pay rise, because that will in itself then push inflation further. And I suppose there is an argument there, isn't there? That when we talk about something like Rishi Sunak's measures to help people with their energy bills, just giving people more cash, that doesn't affect the root cause of why those are rising. It's just pushing the prices up higher and higher. Surely we need to have cheaper energy in the first place, not giving people more cash to deal with higher prices that will then make the prices go up again, and then people will ask for more money, and it's a vicious cycle. Are we heading for Weimar Germany?
No, we're not heading for Weimar Germany. That was triple, even quadruple digit annual inflation. And even when I was a kid, Tom, inflation was up above 20%. That's one reason why maybe I'm quite focused on inflation as one of the more experienced members of our journalistic troupe. I think what Andrew Bailey said, the Governor of the Bank of England, is nothing that I haven't written or said on my show. I think he was tone deaf. This is a guy on £500,000 a year, paid for by taxpayers, and he's asking people not to try and get a pay rise for themselves and their family if we can. This is a man who I think has dented the credibility of the Bank of England. He's been saying for months and months and months, when people like me have been warning about inflation, it's transitory, don't worry about it. Completely wrong, 100% wrong. Admit you're wrong, move on, try and rebuild your credibility. It strikes me that as inflation goes up, and I think it will peak at 7, 8% on the official measures, much higher on the measures people actually experience in the summer, it really is going to convulse politics. As Bill Clinton's advisors told us in the 90s, maybe some of your earliest memories, Tom, as a political nerd. It's the economy stupid. Every so often, the economy trumps all politics, all culture wars, all nonsense about Downing Street parties, and everyone focuses on the pound in your pocket, the money in your purse and handbag. That is what is about to happen, in my view, in British politics, and that's why we're so focused on this issue. On the Money, 1 p.m.
Liam, thank you so much for coming in. We'll look forward to your show this afternoon. But, I mean, gosh, what an issue.